Good morning, Reptilians. Welcome and welcome back to the channel. I'm Elle, and this is Elle's Reptiles. This week, we are doing a video that I have done for every other animal, a lot of other animals except for leopard geckos, and that is 10 things that I wish I knew before I got my leopard gecko. Not sure how I managed to do all the other ones and not leopard geckos, but here we are. Before we get started, this video is sponsored by the Doobia Dude, so make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out how you can save 10% off of your entire order at thedoobiadude.com. Let's get started. So the very first one on the list is that babies are shy. Baby leopard geckos are super teeny tiny, so of course they're shy. You're a lot bigger than them. Of course they're going to be scared of you at first. This definitely took a lot of getting used to after starting out with a bearded dragon and a ball python. I think we got Sylvanus before we got Percy. Starting out with those animals who are not necessarily super shy as babies, and then moving to a leopard gecko took a lot of getting used to, and a lot of me feel like I was doing something wrong, but that is not the case. They are just super shy as babies, and that's normal. Keep putting in that time, be patient, and eventually they will come around. Next up, leopard geckos usually eat their own shed. This would have been a lessened cause for concern had I known it right out of the gate, because I was used to my bearded dragon shedding all the time, and you would find the pieces of shed everywhere all the time, and you knew that she was growing. But with leopard geckos, since they eat it and there's no trace of shed left behind, you just kind of have to hope for the best and hope they're growing. As long as you can see that your leopard gecko is not losing weight, as long as they're using the bathroom correctly, as long as they are doing all those things, then they are probably growing. But you just won't have that shed there to be a reassuring sign that they are in fact growing. This next one is a big one, and it obviously is not going to apply to every single leopard gecko, but it did apply to both of my females, and that is that at around 18 months, they will just kind of go through this really stubborn phase. Around 18 months is when a leopard gecko is officially an adult. They transition from being a juvenile to being adult. So around that 12 to 18 month time frame, they just kind of stop eating. They just don't want to eat. They get very stubborn. They may hide a lot, and apparently that is completely normal. Both times I ended up taking them to the vet because I was super worried about them because they weren't eating, and they had x-rays, they had labs done, they had everything, and they were completely healthy. And both times the reptile specialist informed me that this is just kind of something that happens. I'm not a vet, so this is not veterinary advice, but for my personal situation, in that situation, the vet suggested that I just take their food bowl completely out of the tank for about a week and then put it back in with fresh food, and that should kick them into eating, make them want to eat again, and it worked. It worked for both of them. So again, not a vet, not giving you veterinary advice, but that is what worked for my leopard geckos when that happened. Obviously, if your leopard gecko is showing other signs like lethargy, losing weight, they're losing a lot of weight in their tail, they have any kind of tremors or anything like that, then they definitely need to go to the vet. But we're just talking about that small little window of time that this sometimes happens. They love to dig. When I very first got Percy, the big thing was to keep leopard geckos on tile or non-adhesive shelf liner, paper towels, things like that, because at that point, which was years ago, everyone was so worried about impaction, so that was the go-to thing. It wasn't until later in my keeping of leopard geckos that I learned that they adore bioactive tanks, and that impaction issues are usually more of an incorrect habitat situation mixed with calcium sand situation, and less of just them eating substrate. I really wish that I knew much sooner that normal substrates were perfectly okay. I wish I knew how much Percy was gonna love to dig. That is her favorite pastime. She just does it for fun, and I wish I knew that sooner, because she definitely would have had a dig box a whole lot sooner. Their body language in general. This is the reason that I made an entire leopard gecko body language sort of video, just to kind of show little things that they do, because leopard geckos have so much personality, and you can just see it happening as they do things. Little tail flickers or tail waves, so many different things that they do, and you can just kind of see what's going on in their heads a little bit if you know what to look for. Yeah, just super cool. Leopard geckos can get addicted to waxworms. This is one that thankfully I never had to deal with personally, but it is one that I felt like really needed to be on this list because I feel like a lot of beginners are going to watch this list. Leopard geckos can just love waxworms so much that they only want to eat that, and they just will kind of stop eating everything else because they only want to be fed waxworms. This is not something that is super common, but it is something that can happen. I have always used waxworms as a treat, but the way that you avoid this is by not feeding them waxworms as their staple food. If they are getting a constant supply of waxworms and then you cut that supply off and try to replace it with something like mealworms or dubia roaches, there is a chance that they aren't going to want to eat that because the only thing they want to eat is waxworms. So do not ever make waxworms a staple food for leopard geckos. It shouldn't be anyway. It's very high in fat contents. Just be careful if you are going to feed waxworms. Just something that I felt like was super important to put into this video. They will benefit from UVB light. This is another one when I first got my leopard gecko that was not a big thing. It was well known at that point that leopard geckos did not need UVB lighting. They just needed heat and just some sort of day-night cycle. But it has since been discovered that they very much will benefit from UVB lighting. Them going without UVB lighting isn't something that's going to necessarily be a health hazard for them, but having UVB lighting can increase their activity levels, it can increase their appetite, it can just make them happier in life, and I wish I knew that sooner because I would have got Percy a UVB light so much sooner than I did. On that note, I wish that I had deep heat projectors on my tanks as heat source so much sooner. I really couldn't have because they didn't exist at that point, but I love deep heat projectors. Basking bulbs are great. Different sources of heat are great, but I just absolutely love deep heat projectors. The heat penetrates all the way into the tank and into hides, and the animals seem to really enjoy hanging out in it. They don't put off light, so you can use them 24/7, and they last. I have not had to replace a single one of these deep heat projectors, which are in five different tanks right now. They've been in those tanks for months upon months upon months, probably going on at least a year now, I think, for starlings. I haven't had to replace them. They just lasted, which if you use heat bulbs, you know that that is not the case with heat bulbs. I just love them. I love the type of heat that they put off, and the animals seem to really enjoy them too. Leopard geckos can be fast. They don't really look like they can be. They kind of just slowly move around and like wag their tail around and stuff. But if they get startled, they can sprint. This is super important to know, especially if you are attempting to do something like put them on your shoulder like you would a bearded dragon, which is something that I do not recommend doing. If something scares them, if a sudden movement is made, if your hair touches them wrong, if a dog barks, anything that could possibly scare them, if that happens and they decide to sprint, they could get seriously injured. So make sure that you are watching them very closely if you are carrying them around or standing up and holding them, because yeah, they can be fast and it is rather startling when they do start to run fast, and we don't want you to accidentally draw off that leopard gecko. And the last one on this list is just that leopard geckos, from gecko to gecko, their personalities are vastly different. You can have two geckos and they can be completely different personality types. That is the case with mine. Percy absolutely loves being out and being held. Winter does not like being touched at all. She likes being hand-fed. She likes me feeding her food, but she does not like being touched. Percy absolutely hates being in water. She doesn't like being wet, whereas Winter splashes around in her water dish almost every night. And I have to refill her water bowl because it's completely empty almost every day because she loves playing in her water bowl so much. They can have completely different personalities, and that's super cool because honestly getting a second leopard gecko was never planned for me. I just saw her on Craigslist and she clearly needed a new home, and that wasn't something that I was going to do because I already had a leopard gecko. But them having such different personalities, it feels like I have two completely separate animals. Super cool. But that is it. That is all that I have for this week's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something about your leopard gecko. If your leopard gecko does something cool or crazy, or you found out something quickly after getting your leopard gecko that you wish you'd known sooner, make sure to leave it down in the comments below so that other people can learn this sort of stuff too. As I said at the beginning of this video is sponsored by the Doobie Doo. The Doobie Doo is an awesome place to get doobie roaches for animals like leopard geckos and other reptiles too. My bearded dragon obviously eats a lot of doobie roaches. My cave gecko, my crocodile skate, they all love doobie roaches, and I so much more prefer to keep doobie roaches than crickets because they are so much better. They're cleaner, they don't stink up my entire reptile room, they are quiet, they don't climb out and escape, they're healthier than crickets, they are just better in every single way, and I cannot recommend them enough as a staple bug for your animals. If you do happen to order from thedoobie-doo.com, make sure to use code Elle, and you can save 10% off of your entire order. Thank you so much to the Doobie Doo for sponsoring this video. As always, if you have not already, please feel free to follow me on my socials and like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications every single time I put out a new video, which is every Sunday and some Wednesdays. This week's Instagram shoutout is here, and this week's subscriber shoutout is here. Thank you so much for liking and following and subscribing and sharing and all that jazz. You are the bee's knees. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye. I have waited too late to do this, and now the neighbor's dog is gonna bark all night, so hopefully you can't hear that. Growing, but you just won't have that shed to be a encouraging. Cool, because honestly, getting a separate. Oh, he moved closer to bark. Fantastic.